If they're not burning the midnight oil fixing this bloody problem, we'll have their guts for garters. To Newswatch, the partisan point scoring, well, having just done some, the partisan point scoring against our politicians, you know, having just done some, I fear that it might be spreading a little bit too much cynicism when we do need a bit more trust, but we also do need some politicians to trust more. I guess people, look, I guess they're all trying to do their best. You know, they're all trying to do their best against a circumstance and a virus that we haven't come across before and struggling to understand. So I guess mistakes are going to be made, and we've got to have these debates and now and then a bit of criticism when things fall down. But I have to say that with some of the early attacks on the Prime Minister, for instance, I mean, yeah, journalists and activists calling him a racist, for instance, for sending the first evacuees from China. Remember that? How long ago that now seems. The first evacuees from China to quarantine on Christmas Island. Racist. Well, how petty and dumb does that look now? If only we'd sent more people to Christmas Island, we wouldn't have been in quite this pickle. But the worst example that I've seen, is really quite astonishing, has been the media savaging of US President Donald Trump. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. Now, the worst of that probably has been the initial mockery of Trump when he said that chloroquine, which is this anti-malarial drug that I mentioned at the start of the show, the one that the Australian government's now hopping into, investing in trials in Queensland, when Trump said it might work. And he said, well, there's no harm in trying it when people were dying and this drug was already approved for use, at least against malaria. No harm in at least trying it. But here is just one example of the media left attacking Trump as a huckster for saying that. This is the sort of baiting he gets all the time.
Is it possible that your impulse to put a positive spin on things may be giving Americans a false sense of hope?
No, I don't think so.
Preparedness right now.
No, I don't think so. I think that I think it's got
the not yet approved drug.
Such a lovely question. Look, it may work and it may not work. It happens. We have nothing to lose. You know the expression? What the hell do you have to lose? Okay.
So what do you say to Americans who are nearly 200? I'll spell up.
John, go ahead.
Dead. What do you say the Americans were scared though? I guess nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
I
think it's a very nasty question, and I think it's a very bad signal that you're putting out to the American people. The American people are looking for answers, and they're looking for hope. And you're doing sensationalism.
In fact, CNN went on to have the hide to blame Donald Trump for making people over Nigeria take more than the prescribed dose of chloroquine. They overdosed, and CNN blamed him. They take chloroquine already there to fight malaria. And CNN's headline, Nigeria records chloroquine poisoning after Trump endorses it for coronavirus treatment. And Bloomberg, now that's the media outlet of failed Democrat candidate Michael Bloomberg, that announced Nigeria has chloroquine poisonings after Trump praised drugs. It's insane, you know. What next? If Trump praises Panadol and suddenly people take a whole packet worth at once, that's Trump's fault as well? Joining me on Newswatch is Gerard Henderson, head of the Sydney Institute, columnist with the Australian newspaper and author of the Media Watchdog blog. Truly, Gerard, I mean, as I said, the joke could be, the joke used to be Trump could find a cure for cancer or the coronavirus, and the media would still find an excuse for attacking him.
Well, we're just seeing that joke played out, particularly in CNN and NBC and some other American outlets. Look, what you have in the current crisis is a dreadful situation. You highlight it with our terrible unemployment, especially among people who now have no jobs, who once had quite good jobs. And what you need in this kind of environment is a degree of leadership. And what the President's trying to do is give some kind of hope. He's not saying there's a cure, but he's saying there may be some treatment here before we get something to control the disease. Now, just imagine the Second World War if Winston Churchill had gone around Britain in the early 1940s and said, look, the German Navy will isolate this country, we will all starve to death. He didn't do that. He was realistic, but he gave the British people hope right through the war, and other war leaders did at the time as well. And all the President's saying is, look, there might be a way we can alleviate some of these dreadful health situations in the short to medium term before we go beyond that. And what he's done is he's ridiculed by a left-wing journalist, and it wouldn't matter what he did. They all suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, and it wouldn't matter what he did. They would always criticise it. But I think his position is that a leader has to be realistic, but also has to imbue some kind of hope, because what he's saying is not unrealistic. We have very clever men and women working in medicine in this country, in the United States and other countries, and they may well come up with some kind of short-term treatment of this virus. And it's reasonable to hope that they will. Now, as I understand it, that's all the president's doing. But in a sense, some of the media, the left-wing media in America, is essentially blaming him. Now, we know that if the Democrats had won the last election and President Trump had not won the last election, the situation would have been the same. It might have been worse, because President Trump was the first leader, along with Scott Morrison and a couple of others, who put a ban on people coming in from China without going through quite serious medical checks. And that probably delayed the virus into the United States, and but the left-wing journalists don't want to acknowledge that. They want to blame Trump for everything.